But if at any point, thank you, Sharon. If at any point you have questions or discussion, this is obviously a small group, but I want it to be as informal and informative as possible. So this is kind of the agenda that we're going to be looking at. We've done the first bullet point. We're going to talk some general advice about communicating with legislators and cultivating relationships with them. We're going to talk about the LWV of Missouri legislative alert system that Nancy is involved in and referred to, and now Ruth is involved in as well. We're going to mention the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition Bill Tracker, and they have their own legislative alerts that we can look at. Talk about navigating the legislature's websites, how to testify, and the importance of timely communication. And just a overall point that we need to keep in mind as we talk this through: our advocacy is issue focused and based on adopted policy positions. We are a nonpartisan organization, so we have that in mind in all of our communications with the legislature. We did that. In general, there are several different ways to, I can make this better, I think. There we go. In general, there are several ways to communicate with legislators.
We're not
You're not
your
seeing
screen.
my, oh, okay. What have I done wrong? Share screen. Okay. See if this works.
Yes.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'll put it on this kind of format. Oh, good. I can still see you guys on the side. So, first thing to just touch on is communicating with legislators, because that's a lot of what we're going to encourage you to do. There are many methods of impact, ranging from emails, phone calls, letters, and then in-person contact either at the Capitol or in their district office or district meetings. And these are sort of in ascending order, maybe of effectiveness, but we also have to consider practicality, and email, of course, is the easiest method to communicate with legislators. And from my experience with our Boone County legislators, they're very receptive to email, usually respond to emails. And even if the legislator, him or herself, does not read every email, their staff does. They summarize the information for the legislature, and they will at least know that they were contacted and what the content of the contact was. Phone calls are the same way. You could call them in their office. You can try to set up a time to speak with them personally, or you can speak with their staff member. We've told that letters can be impactful. They probably should be typewritten letters, but we're told one helpful thing is to make out the envelope in your own handwriting, so that they know that the letter is coming from an individual person, with your address on it, and are less likely to just pitch it. However, we've also been told that they pitched all handwritten because they think they're coming from prisoners, which is pretty sad. But so I don't know, Nancy, do you have advice for us on that? Because I've heard both ways on that.
No, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
But you're right, they do get a lot of letters from prisoners.
I'm sure.
But usually the legislative assistant, the LA, will screen those out.
I see. Okay. One important thing is that shoot, what did I just do? One important thing is to remember that you're always communicating on behalf of yourself. Really, only the president of the state organization is the official spokesperson for the league. And to an extent, the local presidents are, for things like op-eds and that kind of thing, are allowed to speak on behalf of the league, but otherwise we need to always communicate just on behalf of ourselves. And the important things about the messaging are listed here. Timing is extremely important during this process, especially as we get later in the session and things start kind of happening fast and furious. So you need to be sure that it doesn't do much good to contact them after, for example, to contact the members of a committee after they've already met and voted on something. And you'll get good cues in the legislative bulletin about that timing, but we need to follow them to the extent possible. Accuracy, just always be sure to provide accurate information, which I know you all would do. Include any relevant narrative story that's personal to you or someone you know. We've been told time and time again that they're much more people are much more receptive to information when it comes in the form of a story about an actual occurrence or actual impact of a policy. And then, gosh darn, and then messages need to be grounded in the sense that we need to be asking for the right action to be taken. And the legislative bulletin is very helpful with that, but we don't want to ask them, for example, to vote against a bill that they are sponsoring. We may want to ask them to alter it, to change some portion of it, or to slow it down, or whatever the case may be. But just need to be realistic about what we're asking for. There's a convention for legislators' email addresses. And as you can see, it's just pretty much first name dot last name at either house.mo.gov or senate.mo.gov. As far as building relationships with legislatures, it certainly is helpful to learn something about their background, and you can get that information from the, from the legislative websites that I'll show you in a bit. But their point of view is obviously very much shaped by what they do in the rest of their lives, and it can be very helpful to know that background as you're trying to communicate with them. If you have personal connections, that's extremely valuable. If your kids were on the same soccer team, or you're or you go to the same Sunday school, or whatever it might be, that can be very helpful in building relationships. Not just about, if you build a relationship around something outside of their legislative work, then they're more likely to listen to you with respect to the legislature. Two-way communication, be willing and be willing to listen as well as to talk. Offers of information or assistance are more welcome when there's a relationship being built. If there's anything you can provide them with, whether it be a story or something firsthand that you've witnessed, or any way that you can assist them, can be helpful. Remember that it's a professional relationship with professional respect. However you may feel about what they're proposing, you just don't win friends or change people's mind with rudeness or disrespect. So needs to be on a professional level. And then finding out key contacts for various committees and that kind of thing, which we'll talk about more in a bit. There is a link in this PowerPoint deck, which I will send to all of you, the deck of slides. And this is a person who does a lot of representation of nonprofit organizations in the Capitol, Sharon Jones, giving a talk to the league about building relationships with legislators. So it's a lot lengthier than what I just went through, but it's good to watch if you'd like to. So any comments or questions so far?
Mahree, I'll add a quick comment on that building relationships.
Yeah.
My first year in the Capitol, I was on the Education Committee with Representative Charlie Shields, who later became a senator, and his wife is currently a very influential state rep right now. But I found out that Charlie Shields was a trumpet player who played in Marching Mizzou, and that's where he met his wife, in Marching Mizzou. And of course, I was married to a trumpet player, and Paul at the time was good friends with Alex Pickard, who was Marching Mizzou director. So Charlie and I had that connection, and I have used that connection for 25 years to tell people, he's got that Mizzou connection, and you know where he is now. He's the chair of the what do I want to say? Not DESE, the State Board of Education. And in fact, when Alex Pickard died a few years ago and the big funeral was in Columbia, Charlie was there with his wife. And there's a thing that you can, just a little thing like that, and you can build on that and maintain a connection.
Great example. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else have comment or question at this point? Well, let's talk about the mechanics of the legislative bulletins and alerts. I hope you've all received, there have been two thus far, both informational about the organization of the House and the Senate and committee chairs and that kind of thing. Did you all receive those from me?
Mahree,
Forwarded them. The reason I forwarded them.
Excuse me.
Pardon me? Pardon me?
Aren't these going out to every member?
They're supposed to, but I also forward them to this group. That's why I'm asking the question, because for some reason they don't always get through to everybody. I don't know if it goes into people's spam folders. I did request that everyone put the email address that they come from in your contact list so that you get them directly. But
I didn't even get mine, Mahree.
Pardon me?
I got mine from you, but I don't even get it.
Yeah.
I don't
For
get
some
them.
reason, there's
I don't get them.
Did you, Sharon?
No,
Did you get it from me? I sent it.
I
I just
got
sent
the
this
last-
week's yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I will go ahead and try to faithfully forward them every Sunday when they come then. And they are coming
My
on
concern
Sunday.
is, what about the other 100 members who aren't getting those?
Well,
in
I'm
Columbia?
concerned about that too. I think that's something that has to somehow be addressed by the state league.
Perhaps a complaint or a suggestion coming from you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to let them know that there are a number of people who are not receiving them. Mine goes into my spam folder. I have to remember to look there, but usually I get it, so I'm able to forward it. But
I have a bone to pick about the legislative bulletin. The headline is in this large print. It uses a lot of ink every time you want to. I'd like to copy the legislative bulletin many times, and I keep wishing I could figure out how to just get the text that's really useful with the date.
oh, Well, I'll
Instead of
mention that.
this,
I don't know how many
this
people
huge
print it out, but
headline, big letters.
And I bet you're gonna say no color also, right?
Well, you don't
Yes.
have to, I do it in black and white.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'll mention that. The header could be
We
smaller.
can, no, we can do it. We can do it. I'll, next time you get it, email me and I'll Zoom with you and show you how to do it. When? I'm talking to Win.
Oh, Win can do it. Okay.
When you can do it, you just, so next time you get it and you want to print, email me or call me and I'll open up Zoom and show you how to do it.
I guess I could copy the text and put it on another page and copy it
I
that.
don't think you have to. So thank you, Sharon, for offering that. We need to go ahead and move on. So the bulletin is coming out by email every Sunday during the session. And the reason for the inconvenient timing is that the Senate committee that's going to be covering bills on election related matters is meeting on Monday afternoons. So, and they don't post the agendas very far in advance. And therefore, we need the information on Sunday so that we can send our communications on Sunday or call them on Monday morning when that action is called for. That's obviously not every week, but there will be times when we're called upon to immediately contact the members of the Senate committee that considers election laws. And we need to be able to do it again in a timely manner. If we wait till after the meeting on Monday afternoon, then it's obviously less effective, especially if they've already voted on the bill. So the legislative bulletin, as I understand it, a lot of the research that's done, and Ruth alluded to this, that she had joined this team, that the League of Women Voters of Kansas City manages a database of legislative bills on priority issues that the League is interested in. And then those are followed by volunteer members from either Kansas City or other leagues around the state. And I know that Mahree Sable from our league here in Columbia is also following. Oh, what did I just do? I lost my picture of you. Is also following these the bills on reproductive health. So it's a team of folks who do the research. Then that research feeds into the state league, and that's where Nancy's role comes in, where they actually create the call to action. And the calls to action are distributed as the weekly legislative bulletin. And Nancy, I would be pleased if you want to add anything to that description.
That sounds good. We add a little bit of extra stuff to it now and then, like details about the committee or the hearings or something about it, but the meat of stuff will be in the calls to action usually.
Right.
And I might say that sometimes there will be more calls to action that Kansas City sends out than we put in the legislative bulletin, or we shorten them a little bit so that they don't get repetitious, where you're getting the same call to action week after week after week, and then you tend to ignore it. We don't want that to happen.
Good point. Okay, the legislative bulletins give specific information to follow up on. They'll tell you the bill number. They'll tell you what stage of the process it's at. Is it a House committee hearing coming up? Has it already passed the House and gone to the Senate, or vice versa? It'll tell you who to contact, whether it's just sometimes, a lot of times it says contact your own legislator. But many times it may also encourage us to contact members of a legislative committee most of whom, maybe all of whom, may be outside of our own district. It helps with talking points, and then the legislative alerts, which are often either embedded in or attached to the bulletin, will tell you, look, please call this number. Very specific, immediate actions. And if you want to review current and previous legislative bulletins, you can always find them at the State League website, which the URL is given there, the link.
I have a question.
Yes?
I think one of the most effective things is to contact the chairman of the committee before or during the hearing, the day of the hearing. But do they, if our representative isn't on that committee, do you think they pay that much attention to it? Since we're not in their district.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that and then ask Nancy to add to it. In my experience, I've been pleasantly surprised at times when I contacted the members of a committee. I've been pleasantly surprised to receive responses from some of them, polite responses, maybe just from their staff, you know, but it's signed by the legislator. But there are some who literally block communications from outside their own district, or who give you a message if you send an email to them through their constituent contact on the website. They'll say, yeah, if you're not in my district, I'm not going to read your message. So it just kind of depends on the individual and how amenable they are to, how open they are to feedback, I guess. But yeah, it's sometimes our own personal legislators from Boone County are not involved in a committee that is considering something that's really important. So you kind of have to reach out. And I'll talk about testimony in a few minutes. Nancy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think you're right. I never think it hurts to try.
Yeah, good point. Good point. This is just an example. It's from a couple of years ago, but it shows you what a legislative alert looks like. As you can see, the subject is citizen initiative petition bills. It tells the specific bill number, the league position on that bill, and then describes just briefly, you know, what it would do, what the current status of the bill is. In this case, it was stalled due to a filibuster, and it says this means your voices are being heard, but it could be taken up again this week, and it could become a vehicle. Another bill, a related bill, could become a vehicle for doing the same thing this bill was trying to do. And so they give talking points. They give a link to the bill summary if you want to read the details. And then they ask you to call your senator, your own senator. And gives you a couple ways to do that, and gives you link to further reading. And then it states the league position upon which this action is based. So that in a nutshell is the information you receive.
IP defense.
Pardon me?
Mahree?
What was IP defense? What is that?
Initiative petition.
Now I have a question too, Mahree.
Yes.
If you're representing only yourself, you don't really tell them that the league's position. Is that right? You tell them your position.
That's correct.
It says further reading, running list of news on IP defense in Missouri. That's what I was referring to.
Petition defense. Does that make sense?
So what does IP stand for?
Initiative petition.
Initiative petition.
Oh,
Initiative
It's a,
petition. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's their
Okay,
language for
but-
how to defend it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go to that for reading, it'll
Sorry, I
give
couldn't
you
figure
additional
that out.
information. So back to Barbara's question, you are not stating the league position to them, but sometimes it gives you verbiage that you can use in your message. So when you call, say if you did call your senator, you could say something to the effect that a responsible government should be responsive to the will of the people. Missourians have been able to make their voices heard through this process. You know, use however you want to alter the talking points so they seem natural to you. But they just want to make sure, I think, that the members who are receiving this information understand that it does relate back to a position that had, and by a position, that means it has been studied and approved by the membership of the state league. So you're well grounded. Does that make sense? Ruth? You're muted, I'm afraid.
I was going to share my mistaken action in a letter. I wasn't speaking on behalf of the league, but I did mention that I belong to the league and how many members are in the league. And I should not have done that. And I think there are a lot of organizations that do encourage us to share that kind of information so that the legislator knows that there are lots of other people with the same opinion, and the league does not want us to do that. So,
Nancy, can you address that? Do you know why that different tactic is taken?
That's true, because only the officers or the chair of the committee who's dealing with this is authorized to speak on behalf of the league. But also, as Ruth mentioned, why it's probably not a good idea to say how many members we have is because we have an oversized reputation for an undersized number of people. If you get my, you know, they kind of think we're everywhere, even though we know we're not everywhere.
Good point.
We are in Boone County, Nancy.
Good point. Well, and I think too that the effectiveness of like form letters in which many people kind of express the same thoughts and it's obviously coming from an organization, I think those are willfully ignored much of the time. So you're actually being more effective by using your own voice, communicating as an individual, even though it seems kind of counterintuitive. Ruth?
maybe Nancy can shed some light on this, because I've been told that staff members do note how many pros and how many cons are received on a certain issue, that the legislators really appreciate a story that they can take to support their position when they speak to other legislators, but that numbers are not totally insignificant. What do you say, Nancy?
You're right. There are lots of times they have so many for and so many against. I think we get a little bit jaded and think, well, it's 75-2 and they went with the 2. So evidently they're not listening, but I don't know that that's the case, but we all know that there is an awful lot of pressure to go along with the majority. And it's difficult to do, but I do think you're right, Ruth. Both things are important. The numbers are important, and so are the personal stories.
So the more of us who call or write about a particular legislative alert, the better
Right.
influence will be. So just to kind of look at the priorities that were voted on by the LWV Missouri membership for 2025. Cannot get used to the fact that every time I touch my mouse, it advances the slides. I'm sorry. Okay. As we've stated a couple of times, our main focus is always on election law and voting rights, but we have policy positions underlying advocacy efforts on a number of different issues. And if you want to look at all of them, you can go to that link to do so. But this is a little synopsis of the 2025 priorities. And
it leaves nothing out.
What, Sharon? Yes,
And
it does.
leaves nothing or very little out.
Yeah, except I noticed that we do not have LGBTQ rights on the list, which I just noticed that when I was updating these slides from last year, because it was on the list last year. So I don't know if they're just including that under diversity, equity, and inclusion, or
Yes,
what?
I think so. I think it's just moved under diversity, equity, and inclusion.
But, and these are not in order of priority except for the top one.
Right.
They're not sorted by importance here, but these are the things that we're anticipating. These issues will be those that come up during this legislative session. And our local league had a planning meeting last week in which we added these priorities for our local efforts, just so you're aware: protecting the gains from Prop A. Local control is an important area that we continually have to be vigilant about. And there are already a number of bills being filed, especially it seems to come up in the environmental arena. They want to block locals from doing anything progressive on the environment. Gerrymandering, that is on the list as an ongoing concern, although there won't be any congressional redistricting done this year. But that's an area that we feel needs to be addressed. Protecting the Missouri court plan, trying to keep our judiciary as independent of political parties as possible, even though they run as political parties. I mean, as political candidates once they're in, but their initial appointments are done through a process called the Missouri Court Plan, which is designed to temper the influence of politics on the judiciary. And we're going to have a lunch and learn on that subject in April, so I'd encourage everybody to attend that. Welfare of children and senior adults, the death penalty, immigration issues, and cash bail reform. Now, the last one, cash bail reform, does not seem to have a state position on it, so can't really be, that needs to be studied more and written up before it's really approved as a state position, but it is one of our priorities locally. I wanted to make you aware of, go ahead, does someone have a question?
You might be able to subject the cash bail reform under our stance on poverty and equal protection under the law kind of thing. I mean, it might be kind of extreme, but might be
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it certainly touches on those issues certainly.
And
touch
probably
on it. We
need
don't
to
have
have
anything
a
explicit about it.
study, understand it.
Want to make you aware of the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. This is a group of, it is exactly what it says, a coalition of many, many groups across the state. They hold weekly Zoom calls at 10 o'clock on Monday mornings. And anyone can sign up to participate in those calls. We usually have 2 or 3 people, 3 or 4 people from Columbia Boone County that participate in the calls. And it's a good way to learn about what the current issues are and about what different partners are doing around the state related to voting, voter protection. Sharon, Ruth, do you have anything to add about that? They have legislative alerts, and I gave the address for those. Their focus is narrower than ours in the sense that they don't have that long list of priorities. They are singularly focused on voting rights. Things like voter ID, list purging, the initiative petition process, and so on. So these are some resources about the House and Senate websites, and also access to information on how a bill becomes a law. I will say that we're not going to go through all the steps today, but if anybody wants a tutorial on that or needs a tutorial on that, I'd be more than happy to kind of walk through it with you at another time. What it really amounts to, there's a link in this folder that allows access to a program about how a bill becomes a law. And it's talking about the federal level, but the process is pretty much the same at the state level. It involves initial filing of a bill, its initial reading, which has to be done multiple times. Then it's assigned to a committee, and it's at that point, I mean, we have to keep in perspective. I think there were more than 3,000 bills signed. I'm going to turn my light on. I'm kind of in the dark here. More than 3,000 bills filed last time, and they passed, what was it, 28, Nancy? Was that other than the budget bills, which they're constitutionally required to pass? So
record low number.
Yeah, record low number. But at any rate, that tells us how many, many bills get filed that never even make it to a committee hearing. And then the ones that do make it to a committee hearing, only a minority of those actually survive the whole process. But we will be asked to weigh in from the point at which they're being assigned to and heard by a committee through, bills can originate in either the Senate or the House, and they go through the committee structure there. And then if they're passed by the full House or full Senate, then they go to the other House and go through the same process, assigned to a committee, heard by a committee. That's the short version of the process. There are times when bits and pieces of bills start getting plastered together at the end of the session, and it can be very difficult to track, where certain bill language is at that point, but we'll count on our bill trackers to let us know. And I looked on the Secretary of State website, and there is there's normally a General Assembly roster there, but with the new Secretary of State, there is no 2025 version yet available. Once it's a new legislature, a lot of the ones listed in the last years are no longer there, and they may have moved offices or whatever. So we have to rely on the house.mo.gov and senate.mo.gov for contact information and that kind of thing, and access to bills. I'm going to see, I don't know if it'll work if I go here. Sharon, I need a little coaching here. How do I show, like, I got my browser to go there, but how do I stop sharing and then reshare?
Yeah,
Show them up.
you have to
Okay.
stop sharing what you are, or at least
Okay.
stop your slides. Yeah, and do it
Okay.
again.
Okay, cool. Here we are. This is, for example, the House of Representatives website. And there are a number of things I want to point out. First of all, you can find, this is the home page with a little message from the Speaker of the House. And there's a message board that just usually says when they will next convene, but don't be fooled. The fact that they're not convening until 4 p.m. on Monday, that means the whole House convenes in their chamber at that time, but they will be working Monday afternoon with committee hearings already. So if there are committee hearings currently in progress, I'll show it there. For the House, a key thing is you can submit testimony for a bill that's going to be heard by a committee by clicking on this link right here. And it's a wonderful process. It's streamlined. You just plug your information in and send it, and it becomes part of the official testimony, just along with all of the testimony given while the committee's there. And that's important because not all members of the committee attend a given hearing, and not all members of the committee are even attentive to the people who are testifying in front of them, but they will receive a summary from their staff of the testimony that's been received, and written testimony for the House is acceptable and supposed to be considered equally with verbal testimony. So find your representative. I'm sure you all know who your representative is, but that does have this function here. This shows a dashboard. We had 770 bills pre-filed. Of those, 329 have been introduced and 154 have been assigned to committee. And then, oh, excuse me, just a minute. Here's my mute. There.
This is the thing that I think the league should fight for, is that the Senate sets up their website to enable this feature that the House has.
Yeah, good point, because the whole thing about testifying, submitting written testimony does not happen in the Senate. The only testimony that becomes part of the official record is what's given verbally in front of the committee. So that's a problem. But if you want to search for a particular bill, you can put it in here, up here in the search box. And it will turn up the bill link, which you can then, we've already had a public hearing on this. This is one of our lovely local preemption bills that would prohibit local governments from requiring private property owners to accept Section 8 vouchers. I don't know if that's actually being done anywhere, but I know it's being discussed. And they want to head it off its pass and make sure that locals can't try to solve their housing problems by.
My understanding is that it's not law, it's ordinance or whatever in Colombia, but then the landlords have required you to have a certain credit score, so they get around it that way.
Right, exactly. If you want more, if you want to see the bill itself, you click on that number and that will give you all of the steps that the bill has gone through. Now, you won't need to do this for everyone because the legislative alerts will give us this information, but I just wanted you to see the richness of and detail of information. It tells the dates when each of these steps, the committee that it was referred to. And again, you can go here and look and see who's on the Commerce Committee. These are who you would want to contact if you were asked to do so. Okay, so members, just to show you an example, I'll show you my representative. You're in alphabetical order here. If we go to David Tyson Smith, it tells a little bit about him. It tells what committees he's on, and he is on the elections committee, at least has been. So I presume that's up to date. Yeah, 2025 regular session. It gives his legislative assistant's name, his phone number, and his email address. And that's this, on this side, it will show for each legislator what bills they are sponsoring and what bills they are co-sponsoring. In this case, none. And what amendments to other people's bills. He's sponsoring none so far. So hearings, this is the calendar. And as you can see, they do get amended, they do get corrected, they get moved around. So it can be kind of interesting to try to track that. If you just want to look at legislation as the session goes on, you can look things up here, which truly agreed and finally passed is the jargon for that has been made into law. But and sent to the governor, and then the governor has a certain period of time in which he can sign the bill, or in Missouri, if he can allow it to become law without signing it. But if he wants to stop it from becoming law, he has to veto it. So there's no such thing as a pocket veto where he can just hang on to it until it dies. It won't die, it'll be enacted. So this is important dates of the session. So anyway, I think that's enough of that. We kind of have the idea, unless anybody has a question about it. I'll go to the Senate real quick. Kind of the same setup. I won't go through it all, but you can explore it yourself if you would like. I find the Senate. What is this? Oh, no, that's not what I meant. Let's do. Oh, no, I don't know. There is such a thing. There must be. Modifies provisions relating to county officials. They give a summary. As you can see up here, you can get the full bill text. You can get all the actions up to this date, any amendments, the available summaries, committee minutes, anything relating to this bill that you'd like. So in a way, this is, I find this one more informative than the other one, but pretty much the same idea. All right, let's go back to our PowerPoint. We're almost done here. The tasks involved with advocacy: familiarize yourself with how a bill becomes a law. So, kind of understand the sequence of events, and you don't have to memorize all that, but just be familiar with it. Here's the link to the video that I mentioned. Review the, whoops, that's not right. And review the legislative alerts. Decide which kind of contact you want to make, if you want to email, if you want to call, if you want to write a letter, and then follow through on the actions that are recommended. And then another important task that we're asking you to do is decide which local legislator or legislators you wish to get to know better and how you're going to do that, either by sitting down to meet with them, or if like I say, if you already know someone. For example, David Tyson Smith usually comes to NAACP events. So if I attend an NAACP event, I'm going to make sure to say hello and to, strike up a cordial conversation with them. And you can think about other settings in which you might, if you go to the same church, or if you belong to the same social function or the same political party and go to party function. This is kind of an advanced concept, but again, just so you understand why what you'll be asked to do may vary. There are more options than just asking for a no vote. And so these are some of the things that we may be asked, some of the asks that we may be asked to make, if that makes sense. I'm trying to delay a vote, trying to ask for specific changes, trying to ask the members of the committee to amend a bill, or to ask certain questions during a hearing, and so on. House testimony, as we already mentioned, you can do that to submit written testimony. Testifying as an individual, you can submit only after a hearing on the bill has been scheduled. So you can't line up all the ones you're interested in and do them in advance. But if, again, the legislative alert will say there's a hearing scheduled, and the House committee meets on Tuesdays, so you have a little more time there. And you can, so then you can submit your testimony anytime until midnight on the day the hearing adjourns. So if they meet on Tuesday, you have till Tuesday at midnight to submit your comments. And remember, it's a two-step process. And I should have mentioned this before. The form will come up, you'll enter all your information, you'll send it, and then you have to go back to your email and look for a verification email from the House where they'll say, did you do this? And you say, yes. And then it's actually submitted. So don't forget that second step. I mean, at first, I think I missed one because I did everything up to that point, and then I forgot to look at my email until like Wednesday and didn't count. We also encourage folks, anyone who's interested in getting live testimony at a committee hearing. We would provide a lot more prep than this, but just be aware that that's always a need, and that because we're so close to the Capitol compared to a lot of the leagues around the state, they very much welcome us testifying. So if that's anything that you would be interested in doing, let's talk more about that. Yeah, this is an important point. Obviously, in the Senate, you can't submit written testimony, but you can contact the members of the committee by email or by phone call. So you can always make phone calls. They won't turn you away for that. But some of them do, I'd say the majority of them do accept email from non-constituents. Usually it's not, you don't have time to write a physical letter, snail mail, send it snail mail, because that you've got to figure that'll take 7 to 10 days to get there and get processed, get to them. But what I do is just write out my comments in a document, and then you have to do individual emails to those Senate committee members, but you can do it just cutting and pasting, basically, and always address them respectfully. Of course, dear Representative so-and-so, or the Honorable Senator so-and-so, that kind of thing. So that's all I had to share. Nancy, did you have anything to add about any of that?
She had to leave.
She's been gone for a while.
Oh, I wasn't looking at the faces. I was looking at the slides. I'm sorry. She must think we're doing okay then, I guess. If you would like to be a lead communicator for a specific issue and encourage others to weigh in on it, let me know. This could be very helpful. Just a reminder that timeliness is important, and that especially toward the end of the session, the process can get very confusing. So don't be afraid to ask questions or clarify things before reaching out. So there are multiple committees that bills have to go. First of all, they can be reassigned to a different committee. They can decide that they weren't assigned to the right committee, or one committee may have a hearing on it, and then they'll, like, say local government, and then they'll think, oh, okay, but that has to do with taxation, so we're also going to refer it to this other committee. So there may be multiple committees working on it, and even when it's passed out by a, say, the local government committee, then they have to go through Rules Committee, Ways and Means Committee, and or a special committee, depending on the subject matter of the bill, before they actually reach a floor vote. And obviously, I mentioned before that key provisions may be amended onto another bill or multiple bills. One thing I've tracked for years is tobacco preemption, where they're always trying to outlaw local ordinances that forbid smoking in public places and sales of cigarettes to minors and those kinds of things. And they'll attach a provision to that effect to maybe 7 or 10 bills in the course of a session, that just embed that or amend it onto other bills that on other subjects. So it's important to follow the legislative alerts closely. Don't assume that because you've already contacted somebody about a particular bill that your job is done, because you may need to contact another set of people about the same bill. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions. Do you have other ideas, suggestions, or questions before we adjourn? We've run a little over. I apologize.
Very
Very-
well organized.
Very helpful, Mahree. Thank you.
Okay.
You can copy and paste Nancy's information from out of the chat box if you want to before you get off.
Oh, okay.
Not just you. I mean everybody.
Right,
if you want,
right.
if you want her.
Yeah, good. She put in for Ruth especially, but for anyone who wants to, the Amy Bluen's email address. The Missouri Budget Project is a nonprofit organization that tries to track the Missouri budget and provide factual information about the impact of various changes in the budget, or the impact of changes in taxation, so on. It's a great source of information. And then Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, I think we already had that embedded in our
And
PowerPoint.
MNEA, like while we were here on this call, I got a message from MNEA, and they do a tremendous job every week, tracking things that pertain to education. They're telling us, and I'm not going to tell you all of it, but they're telling us they're targeting DEI and state agencies, and they're after tax cuts, which they think will, of course, impact education as well as everything else. That was my comment, the last part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one thing you have to do is sort of immunize yourself against getting too anxious about all this stuff, and remember that most of what gets proposed does not get enacted, but you never know. You have to act in order to make our voices heard and hopefully fend off some bad stuff. You'll also be I've pretty much, we focus on a lot of the things that we have to combat, but there is legislation that we will support as well, and that's always a pleasure to write notes about. Sort of the exception rather than the rule, but it feels better. So
The other tricky part is to know when to speak up, because sometimes it's better to be quiet and let it just die, not to speak up. And I think that's what MoVPC works very hard on doing, is trying to select the times when you need to make your voice heard.
And Missouri Voter Protection Coalition actually has a lobbying firm that represents the coalition in the legislature. So they have their feet on the ground. They know the staff, they follow the processes really closely. And so their advice about what may move and what may not is well taken. So. All right, thank you so much. I hope everybody has a lovely evening. And if questions are to you later, don't hesitate to email me and I'll do my best. I will send out the slide deck so that you have the links and that kind of thing.
Thank you,
Thank you
Mahree.
so much.
You might talk about the lobby day next week, because
Oh,
that's
sure.
another
Thank
chance
you.
to interact with the legislators.
Yeah, thank you, Wynn. The Missouri Voter Protection Coalition is actually sponsoring their annual lobbying day, and it will be next Tuesday at the Capitol from 11 to 3. They will have a rally. They will serve lunch to the people who come, and then they will just deploy us to talk with our legislators.
Yeah.
In groups, I think is the plan. So if anybody would like to participate in that, there are several of us from Columbia Boone County going, including Wynn and myself. And I don't share
carpools, right?
Sharon. So if anyone wants to join in that effort, let me know and I'll send you the sign up link. They want you to sign up mainly because of the meal, I think. They want to count noses. But
Well, thank you again, Mahree. That was very
Thank you.
helpful, I think.
See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Mahree, if you'll stay on for a second, I'll make sure you, whoops, she's gone. Okay,